More than 6 years later, key details of Jeffrey Epstein's death remain unresolved.
I'd like to see an investigation to understand how this was permitted to happen when he was incarcerated.
Christmas ornaments, drywall, and Jerry Epstein. Name 3 things that don't hang themselves.
If you realize that you've got a high-profile person that may or may not have committed suicide, but you need to prove that to people, this is not adequate as far as I'm concerned.
We're back with our Epstein death special report. We've been tracking all of the errors in the Trump DOJ's original handling of the case. And then the following administration probed those failures, but ultimately issued the same finding of suicide in a watchdog report from the Garland DOJ in 2023. That 100-page report reviewed the available video cameras footage to conclude the last time anyone came near Epstein's cell was a corrections officer at 10:41 p.m. That's the government conclusion from a detailed probe and report across 2 administrations. That's where the U.S. government would have it stay. But this new law famously forced out the secret internal documents from the same probe, showing other views within the FBI about the last person near Epstein's cell, hidden from the public until now. DOJ said the officer was the last time anyone entered the area. But the Epstein files have revealed a secret FBI log of the same video, which spotted a flash of orange going up the stairs. Inmates wear orange, not officers. The FBI stating a, quote, flash of orange looks to be going up the stairs. Could possibly be an inmate escorted up to Epstein's tier. Now, the FBI's own video review detected that prison orange uniform of a possible inmate. That's big. This review had the evidence. Orange that could be an inmate. But we are now learning it was cut, hidden, or accidentally left out of the DOJ report. The new files reveal this never-before-seen set of details about Epstein's area on the night of his death. And we could show you the locked tier around Epstein's cell, 10:39 p.m. that night. A blurry orange figure appears. The original FBI log calls it that flash of orange could possibly be an inmate. And note that careful description, because then the DOJ review of the same footage changes it to write, quote, inmates are currently on lockdown. It's possible someone is carrying inmate linen up the stairs. Now, that's a huge difference. It replaces observation, orange, with conjecture. Inmates are on lockdown, so they shouldn't be around. But the rule that inmates are supposed to be on lockdown doesn't resolve whether one wasn't, just like Epstein was supposed to get those 30-minute checks, but didn't, that I told you about. Now, the DOJ's change prevents questions about that orange flash and if the jail made another mistake. And the public report by the DOJ hides this dispute over the orange flash. It states that an officer appears to walk up the stairway. CBS's Daniel Rudnick first documented this in a report. Who entered Epstein's jail tier the night of his death? Newly released video logs appear to contradict official accounts. And independent experts telling CBS the video is more consistent with someone wearing an orange prison uniform than a corrections officer. The fact is the DOJ's own watchdog report minimized the FBI evidence. That is just a fact. Now, people can debate why. Was that a good faith mistake or a malicious cover-up? Even videos suggesting an inmate on the loose does not resolve questions around Epstein's death, but it would be another rule violation, and it would add to the evidence suggesting you need a deeper investigation of potential foul play. Now, that was the only camera angle working, shown here on this map. The DOJ report notes recording failures do predate this Epstein probe. There was a history there. And the only working camera that covers a common area outside the entrance to Epstein's general area is here. There isn't video from that better camera that pointed down Epstein's hallway. Now, back in our timeline, moments after Epstein was found dead, the new files for the first time allow us to see the area footage at the moment of that discovery. A figure moving from the desk in the upper left corner towards Epstein's tier and then returning quickly. We see increasing activity. The video adds to the picture of how jail staff responded. Doesn't look like it was an expected event, some giant conspiracy, at least for the officers on the scene. You can see it gets chaotic. They're moving around outside Epstein's tier. But the FBI then didn't arrive for 7 hours. And that's a problem because by then guards had removed Epstein's body. The cell was in disarray. The crime scene tainted under Trump DOJ authority. And the feds didn't fingerprint or DNA test materials in the cell, which is basic forensics to check if others were in the cell or touched items. The jail had control of the scene, but mismanaged the evidence. How bad was it? Well, officers found Epstein with a noose around his neck. But by the time they were done tainting the crime scene, the feds were never even able to establish which noose killed Epstein. There were several nooses fashioned from the clothing. Investigators said they did conclude one handmade noose you see here was not the one used. That's odd. The original account says a guard literally ripped the cloth away when they found Epstein hanging, then CPR. So the new files reveal the underlying evidence from this probe, and the government expected that stuff to stay secret. They never expected that we'd be on the news telling you about it. Like one guard recounting that he didn't recall taking the noose off. I really don't. We can also tell you that after the death, 2 officers were put on leave. Within a week, the medical examiner did state the cause of death was suicide by hanging, mentioning no evidence of defensive wounds that might be part of an attack. The examiner also reviewed footage and thought it was just too blurry to draw conclusions. The new files show they also delayed that ruling on suicide for more review because of Epstein's status. A forensic pathologist hired by Epstein's brother, Dr. Baden, also looked over the autopsy and had a different conclusion, determining injuries on Epstein's neck were closer to, quote, strangulation than suicide. Now, Baden once served as chief medical examiner in New York. Months later, as we go to the timeline, the DOJ indicted the guards on duty that night for lying about the inmate checks that never happened. That's a big deal. It added pressure, though, for those guards to cooperate in the probe, and the DOJ later dropped those same charges. We are learning the FBI heard from an inmate who said that officers were heard discussing covering up Epstein's death in some manner. That was reported just this week by the Miami Herald's Julie K. Brown. There was heat on the Trump DOJ over what you can now see was a debacle that looked even worse over time. And in the middle of the probe, Trump Attorney General Barr made an unusual announcement that he said he watched the jail footage. He ruled out anyone entering the cell or foul play. This was days after the guards were first indicted. Barr giving his case, but there were so many failures he didn't deny them, including, of course, the video recording. He just said the jail had a, quote, perfect storm of screw-ups. Years later, the DOJ report documents those failures, but avoided any mention of the crucial conflicting evidence I just showed you tonight, the flash of orange, whether a person or even an inmate was on the loose near Epstein's cell area. Now, it can be reasonable to make an investigative finding that it's unlikely anyone still entered Epstein's locked cell that night. Or you could state that the total evidence just doesn't suggest it. But Trump officials who oversaw these problems in 2019 and the Biden-Garland DOJ later issuing the report, okay, they went farther. They basically stretched to try to tamp down the growing public concerns. We've heard about a cover-up being sometimes worse than the original incident. Well, ironically, that kind of strained overreach can feed questions about government secrecy, cover-ups, or even foul play. The CBS investigation noted the jail camera angle means it's just not possible to rule out if someone could have climbed the stairs and entered that tier. And this new law has forced out all these documents. It's made the DOJ finally show its work, and that's driving these fresh questions. Autopsy and 2 administrations did state Epstein took his own life, suicide. But other insiders disagree, several saying they don't think Epstein took his life, including his brother, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the pathologist I mentioned. And some of those claims can be suspect as his defenders or even conspirators, but that's their view. And a former Trump attorney who Epstein hired in August, the same month as everything I just showed you, said, I don't think he committed suicide. He was very engaged in fighting the case. He had basically just hired me to kill himself 9 days later. Wouldn't make sense. So let me take this all together tonight. We live in a time of agendas and conjecture and rush narratives. The truth is usually slower. and more complex. Epstein's life was a criminal conspiracy, and his death became a mystery. First plagued by the Trump DOJ failures, then heightened by government secrecy across 2 administrations. This new transparency and evidence undercuts some of those past claims. It clearly shows the need for a fuller, investigative, independent accounting from Epstein's crimes to his time in custody. And as of this hour, it does not yet provide definitive proof for how his life ended.